Welcome friends once again. In my last video I had talked about the steps in risk management. To recount that, we may remember the first step is identifying the risk, that is knowing the name of that risk. Understanding the risk means what is that event which if take place will cause the loss and how those events can take place and how the losses will take place. That is understanding the risk, developing the skill. Then fourth was measuring the risk. Then it was fixing your limit, comparing the risk and your limit, as well as seeing that whether the return is commensurate with the risk or not. Then you take the risk. These all activities are before taking the risk, and then you take the risk, and thereafter you have to do three more things. Constantly monitor the risk, whether it is increasing or decreasing. Then have certain risk control or covering measures. And last is that bring enough capital so that if the losses take place, they can be absorbed by the adequate capital. Now after this was uploaded, two of my students contacted me and they inquired certain things which actually I had discussed in their MBA course. Anyhow, I may make it clear that my videos right now are not for covering the syllabus of any university, but they are for preparing the basic groundwork or the conceptual framework, so that when I start preparing the advanced videos, they will be able to understand what is the concept. Nevertheless, one thing which they had discussed that was about measuring the risk. They said, you said that measuring the risk and you gave the example of a building. But in financial risk, how do you measure that risk? Give some idea. What is that parameter for in that case of the building height is the parameter for measuring the risk. Here in financial risk, what are those parameters through which these risks can be measured? I said, all right. One thing which we have to keep, and that is the most prominently, commonly used at the base level, the parameter is the probability of happening of that event which if takes place may cause the loss. That is the probability is the main parameter for measuring a risk. But then there are different methods for measuring the probability. They will be coming in the advanced videos. But what is that parameter which I call as the counting the probability of that event taking place? For example, if someone has taken the loan or the money from the bank or financial institution or even from you, then he will not pay back the money and I will suffer the losses. How will I measure before giving how much risk is there in giving money to this man? It is measuring the probability of default. That is, what is the probability that he will commit the default. And second thing is that if he commits the default, then how much money will I lose? That in Basel II you will find out the probability of default and loss given default, etc. I will not confuse you right now. So it is basically the probability of that event happening. I will explain it with another very simple example of that Rastogi ji that day. Now what happened when Rastogi ji was taking ticket and I was asking him to come without ticket? What Rastogi ji was telling? he was telling that I won't come without ticket because there is a risk. And he was calculating the risk. And he was finding that 100% risk is there as per his calculation. And when I was saying, no, there is no risk, as per my calculation, the risk was 0. Why two different people counted the same risk? What was the risk? Risk was if he travels or undertakes the activity of traveling without ticket, then an event takes place. What is that event? That the TT may come. Now Rastogi is also calculating the probability of TT coming in that coach, and I was also calculating the probability of the TT coming into the coach. As per his calculation, TT will definitely come. 100% probability or the chances that TT will come. I will be caught, there will be loss, so I won't take that risk. I was telling there is no risk. For the same event, whether the TT will come or not, I am saying there is 0% probability of the TT coming. Why this difference was coming? For him, it was 100%, and for me, for the same event or for the same risk, I measured at 0%. Now, understand, for calculating this probability, what do we need? How can we forecast the happening of the event in the future? Whether it will happen or it will not happen. Past is the guide. History is the guide. Empirical data is the guide for predicting the future. In past, in similar circumstances, what has happened? So we take a guide. So history repeats itself, that is the basis. So there are various methods of using this empirical data or the past data for predicting the future. Now here I will make an example. Rastogi ji, how he calculated, what data did he had in about the past, in which he could say that the TT would come 100%. If in the past he has got a data that traveling without ticket in this train, there is a 100% chance of the TT coming. Or if I was calculating, I must have had the past data of this train that TT will come or not. But here the people forget a lot many. That is the problem of not understanding the concept and using the models and the technology and all that. I tell you. Now this data must be stored. Database should be there. To get this, Rastogi ji had no data of this train, but he had the data of traveling without ticket in a train. In his life, 50 years of life, he traveled thrice without ticket from Lucknow to Lakhimpur, and all the 3 times he was caught. So what happened? Whenever his hard disk, that is in his brain, the data was stored that if you travel in a train without ticket, 100% chance is there that you will be caught, because the past data was supporting. Thrice he traveled without ticket and all the 3 times he was caught. In my case, what was happening? I was traveling by the same train for the last 10 years. So I had got the data of 3650 days of the same train, 914 train, and not even once the TT had come. Now today is the 3651st day. So even if that TT comes this day, then what is the probability? Probability is 1 upon 3651, which is almost 0. So in my calculation, the probability was coming 0. In case of for the same event, Rastogi ji was saying that it will be 100%. I was proved right because Rastogi was applying the data of Lucknow Lakhimpur train in this 914 train. So whenever we are developing a model and we are doing the simulation, there is one technique which I will talk, which is called as the simulation, historical simulation or Monte Carlo, etc. That. So which data you are using and which period data, which place data, which business cycle data you are using, that makes lot of difference. That is why many times these models also fail. There is a model risk also. So first thing, we have to understand that for measuring the risk, you need the past data from where you calculate the probability of that event happening. And that should be very relevant data to that situation. Another thing which my students they discussed, they said, sir, you used to tell the gain and losses from the same risk are asymmetric. Asymmetric का मतलब ये था कि if you take a risk, then if the event doesn't take place, you get the gain. If the event takes place, you will get the loss. So sir, whether the gain and the losses are equal, that is, they are symmetric to that event happening and not happening? No. If Rastogi ji traveled without ticket in that train and that event did not take place, how much money he would have saved? How much he would have gained? Only 7 rupees in those days. But if that event would have happened, then there would have been a loss of 500 rupees or so and loss of reputation, jail, etc. So these are not the symmetric. Losses and gains are not symmetric if you take a risk. You are jumping into a moving train. What is the gain? You may get a seat. What is the loss? You may lose your life. So they are not symmetric. Another thing which beside the probability, calculation of the probability, which is a statistical method, but when I will tell in my advance, I will make it as simple as these videos are there. Now there is another way of looking at the risk. Another way of looking at the risk is called as the deviation. What is the deviation? Just like when you are undertaking an activity, that is and there is an expected outcome. You are expecting something. You are purchasing a share. You are jumping into the moving train. You are purchasing a share. Now you are having an expected outcome from that activity. To make it simple, suppose you are jumping into a moving train. What is the expected outcome? Expected outcome is that I will get into the train. Correct? That is the expected. But actual outcome may be as expected or may deviate from what you had expected. Now, expected outcome and actual outcome will be the same if you jump and get into the train. But the deviation of the actual outcome from the expected outcome will be that instead of getting into the train, you get under the train. Oh, that is the risk. My God. So, another way of looking or measuring the risk is that how much is the chance that the actual outcome will be different than the expected outcome, and that in statistics is measured by what that is called as standard deviation. Now there are different ways. Greeks are there, like beta, alpha, delta, etc. I will not confuse you there. So another way of measuring the risk, one is of the calculating the probability based on the previous data. Another is having or to measure the deviation, the chance of deviation of actual outcome from the expected outcome. Here also the previous data is required to calculate this deviation. You cannot just say there will be a deviation For that also you need the past data and how that is distributed, normal or otherwise. Now one more method is there for measuring the risk. One probability, another deviation, and the third one more is there, that is called as the gap. Now what is this gap? That is mostly in case of the income, or you can say the liquidity or interest. How? Now for example, you are doing a business where the money is coming and going, coming, like a bank. Bank is accepting deposit, lending. So in the bank or in a financial institution, continuously the money is coming and going, coming and going. Now at any point of time there is a risk that that financial institution may not be able to pay to those who have come to take the money from the bank. Why? Because this we call as the inflow and the outflow. The money coming into the bank by some depositors are putting the money, some borrowers are refunding the money, some investments are maturing. So that is the inflow. And outflow is what? The depositors are taking away their money, the creditors, those who have presented the bills, clearing. So all these, there is an outflow. For bank, its creditworthiness in the eyes of the public is that it should never fail in meeting its outflows as and when they take place. Otherwise the public will think bank fail ho gaya hai, it doesn't have got the money to pay depositors, so there will be a run. So bank should always be in a position to meet its outflows, or rather cash outflows, as and when they occur. And how will they meet those cash outflows? They will be meeting at that time how much money is coming into the bank. If suppose the inflow is less and outflow is more, suppose there is 100 rupee is at any point of time, there are the people who are asking bank to pay them 100 rupees, but there is only 80 rupees coming into the bank. So at least 20% they are not able to pay. They will feel bank has failed, bank has failed. So now this gap between the outflow and the inflow, or inflow or outflow, whatever way you may like to see, if the inflow is more, money coming into the bank is 120 and money going out of the bank is 100. Nobody will go disappointed. He will get the money as and when. But if it is the other way, outflow is 120 and inflow is only 100. So there is a gap of 20. This is the risk gap. This gap between inflow and outflow is the risk. Now this risk is high, low, medium. It depends upon how big the gap is. If suppose outflow is 100 and inflow is 99, there is only a gap of 1 rupees which the financial institution can make good. But suppose outflow is 100, inflow is 50. So the gap is 50 means risk is very high that you will not be able to meet your outflows. So the third thing is called as the gap analysis. Calculation of the probability, then deviation of actual outcome from the expected outcome. Third is the gap. Another way of calculating this is the simulation. Simulation means you simulate what happened in the past. What happened in the past, because कहते हैं ना ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है जो कि यहाँ कहते हैं महाभारत में जो नहीं है वो दुनिया में कहीं नहीं है, और जो कहीं भी है दुनिया में वो महाभारत में. तो लोग कहते हैं कि everything is there in the history. Everything is there in the history. So if we repeat the history or we simulate those situations in the past and then see in today's condition what would be the impact on my institution if that situation takes place again, that incident takes place again, that war takes place again, that political uncertainty takes place again, then what would happen to my balance? They are called simulation. So there are different types of the simulation. So we are not going to talk about it. So I thought to share it because my students had pointed it out. Sir, at least you make a basic mention of these techniques. So I will be next video, I will be talking about the different type of the risk, and first risk which we will be talking about will be the credit risk, which across the world every financial institution, if any other risk prevails or not, but every financial institution suffers from the credit risk, and on that lot of regulation research has been done, Basel II, etc. We will be talking in our next video. Thank you, and once again I request you please to subscribe to my channel and share it and like it. Please do it. Thank you. Good night.